Welcome back to our annual buying slash grinding guide where I spent way too much time going through every vehicle that you should either buy or maybe talisman. Premiums are overall always going to be more value for money because their repair costs are lower and their multipliers are higher. But if you already grinded up till tier 6 or tier 7, you might not want to buy a tier 7 premium because you won't get nearly as much value out of it. And of course, premiums also have the added benefit of being able to grind every nation or every tier that is below it. Very quickly, we're going to go through every tier here. We're just going to take a look at some examples of what to buy, and then I'll give you some alternatives. Let's very quickly get into it, because I'm not going to try to make this 1.5 hours long like last year, but I already have an idea that it's probably going to happen. If you're looking to buy anything, feel free to use my discount code down below, especially during the GE sales. You'll get an additional 3% off. You get the decal that will be replaced near the end of the year. I might go back to the skill issue one if the design isn't done in time. But this one is going to be fading out because I'm not entirely satisfied with it. If you do like it, feel free to use the link down below. You get 3%, I get 3%, and you get the decal. Now very quickly, let's take a look at the planes. For tier 1 in America, we're going to take a look at the Tax Buffalo. It's decently fast, it's very maneuverable, not a biplane, but pretty agile, and the firepower is pretty good. No brainer for tier 1, but tier 1s I should normally just say skip tier 1, 2 and 3. But if you really want a tier 1 premium, get the Tax Buffalo. The F-2A1 is the same, and the P36 is just second pick if you really want something else. Then for tier 2, this is a bit of a toss-up, because tier 2 has a lot of good vehicles, but some of them are easier to play than others. We have the P51C10, which I think is the best overall. However, it takes a little bit of discipline as well as trigger discipline. It's fast, it's maneuverable, but lack of firepower means that you have to play it a little bit more methodically. Then we have the F-1NA, which is kind of similar. It's extremely fast, not as maneuverable, but it has more firepower as well as more ammo, making this a little bit easier to play. The P29N, on the other hand, is by far the best performing plane out of this entire list. It's a plane that is incredibly powerful at 2.7. The issue comes from the fact that you only have 7mm in the wings. You have 250 cals in the nose, which don't have much ammo. And then we have this absolute abysmal 37 that doesn't work half the time. If you are a good player and you know how to fly well, you like dogfighting, you like bullying everyone with flight performance, this is the plane for you. But these guns will let you down more often than not. And then we have the A36, kind of the other side of the spectrum. Airspan, mid-flight performance, but with the gun ports, you have so much firepower that you basically just one-shot everything you look at. And then lastly, we have the SB2C4, airspan, 20 mils, incredibly strong guns, very strong turn, at least the first turn, very low stall speed. You can bully people with this thing. And it's a bit of an additional type of grinding. If you're not the best at air combat, it's a very reliable grinder because you always get an airspan. You're able to bomb a little bit if you really want to. And because of the airspan and the good turn plus the guns, you're bound to get 2 or 3 kills basically every game, even if you play it somewhat suicidally. Be careful, it is piss slow, and a good player will abuse the ever-living hell out of you if you fly this thing, because it honestly doesn't have the performance to hang with anyone if they know what they are doing, especially if they're playing a plane that's actually somewhat competitive at tier 2. And trust me, there's a lot of competitive planes at 3.7 to 4.3 that you will run into very often, and if they are experienced, you're probably not gonna get much done. Then we have tier 3. It's another incredibly stacked lineup, and you can tell that the XP50 is now not all the way on the left anymore, and that's because they removed the airspan for this thing. So now I would personally say get the XP55. It's a little bit slower in terms of climb rate, but you have a lot more ammo. You have 400 rounds of A&M2, and you have some 50 cals. The firepower on this thing is incredible. The high speed compression is insane. It pulls at all speeds. The issue is that the roll is kind of wonky, and the pusher prop just feels a little bit weird. You have to get used to this thing. It doesn't fly like other planes. It's a bit like the J7W in that regard. But this thing is incredibly good, other than the fact that it's relatively expensive. And that's why I will still take a look at the XP50 as well as the BF-109 F4. The XP50 is very close in terms of flight performance. It has more firepower, but it has a lot less ammo. Meaning that, well, you have to be somewhat trigger disciplined. You only have 60 rounds per gun, whereas the BF-109 F4 has 200 rounds in the 20mm. But I would still pick the XP50 without the airspan over the BF-109 F4, because the guns just feel a lot better. Now, personally, I'm more of a fan of the F4, and I do like it more, especially the extra ammo means that you can get more kills in a flyout. But if I have to recommend something to you, and you're only looking to get 2 or 3 kills per match, at most, because you're new to grinding, you're new to the game, XP50 to me is going to be the better pick. Also, it has a higher multiplier, 675 versus 555. So I think that the XP50 is better if you are a newer player. I think that the 109 F4 is more fun and probably better if you're someone that played this game for a little while. And now in no particular order, because all these planes are incredibly closely matched in terms of how much I recommend them. We have the P47 D28, which is probably the best P47 that you can actually play right now. You have the F-5NA 4, which is one of the better Corsairs that you can play. It's slightly lower BR, and I do think that it's incredibly good, but it has some limitations. The F-5NAs are kind of bricky right now, and I don't think they're the best anymore. So if I have to really recommend something, it's going to be the P38 LO. It's kind of awkward to play. You have to get used to it because it reacts to the controls of the keyboard and mouse slightly differently. You might not notice this if you're somewhat new, but it's something that might actually hamper you if you're not aware of it. But it gets an airspan that's boosted controls, meaning that you don't really compress. The roll is good, the firepower is good, and together again with the airspan, it means that you will always be in a good position at the start of the game to pounce on enemies without much repercussions if anything goes wrong. The airspan really means that it's very easy to get some kills in early on, and the P38 LO overall is a beast late, early and mid game. Then we have the P63, and again same deal as with the P29N. Great plane, good performance, but the guns kind of let it down. We have 450 cals with not the most amount of ammo, and then we have the absolutely abysmal 37. But at 3.3, this thing is a little bit criminal. Then we have the P51, which is again on the other side of the spectrum. Kind of mid-flight performance, incredibly good guns. And then we have the F-8F, which actually got buffed a little while ago, because now the rudder or the retention isn't nearly as bad, and the engine isn't a thermonuclear bomb anymore. It doesn't overheat nearly as badly, and at 4.7, this thing in terms of flight performance is borderline uncontested. And luckily, we of course have some decent 50 cal bells, even though you only have 2 guns per wing, and again, not the most amount of ammo. For tier 4, it's again incredibly stacked, but we have some pretty good picks here. We have the Spitfire LF Mark 9, which is the best in terms of overall flight performance with good guns. And then on the flip side, we have the Focke-Wulf 190 A8, which is just an airspan cannon monster that you climb straight into the enemy team and just try to gun down as many people as you can. It's a great grinder. However, I think that this is a better plane overall, and it just teaches you a lot better habits, because you actually have to use your flight performance in order to kill people. Only 220 mils, they are incredibly good, but the firepower is slightly lacking. So if you're just looking for a brain dead grinder, the Focke-Wulf 190 A8 is going to be the better pick. Then we have the P51 D10, not on sale all that often, and I would recommend to get this if it ever goes on sale, if you don't have anything yet. But this is more of a niche plane, because it flies like a P51. You have to keep it fast. It's incredibly good, but it's still a P51. It needs a little bit of attention on the discipline department again. But overall, it's an absolute bully machine, but probably not on sale this time around, which means that I'm not really going to be recommending it. Then we have the F2G, which used to be my go-to pick, but right now this thing is 40 bucks. And while it's still pretty decent and the multipliers are pretty damn good, 6.0 is kind of unplayable right now. just like a few years ago. It's not because the lobbies are empty, it's because you get up to the 7.0 basically every match. Against props, this thing is an absolute menace, but if you get into those 7.0 lobbies, you're probably not gonna have a terrific time. It's still somewhat competitive, it has an insane climb rate, it's insanely fast, it has good guns, but 6.0 right now, I'd stay clear of. Then we have the FU4B, slightly lower BR, a lot better in that regard. Insane firepower, very good flight performance. It's not as good as it used to be, but it still climbs decently well. It's very fast. It has an absolute monstrous engine, which can hang with basically anything at low speed, but be careful. If you can drop the flaps down, this thing turns like a little bit of a brick. And then we have the P-51H. Would I recommend this? I want to talk about it anyway. I wouldn't recommend talismaning this thing. It's one of the best props in the entire game, just in raw performance. But 6.3 right now, I just stay absolutely clear of. And you'll see why when we get to the other nations at the battle rating that I'm about to talk about. For tier 5, it's pretty easy. We have the F-86, F-35 if you're ever able to buy it. Then we get the A2D, which is more of a grind machine. Good cannons, good climb rate, air spawn, you can rush straight in, get a little bit of bombing done, get some ground pounding done. Very good multipliers. It's not the best when it comes to air-to-air combat. If you run into props, you absolutely destroy them. If you get up-tiered, you're probably going to get destroyed. And at 7.0, the climb rate and the power of this thing are actually competitive enough to somewhat hang with jets. Now, if they start using their top speed, it's of course completely over. But most of the time they don't, because they think you're a slow prop, you're an attacker, they try to turn with you. And if they turn more than once with you, they are going to die. Then we have the best plane in this entire lineup, the F-2H. Now, be sure to unequip the drop tanks by creating a preset with nothing on it. The drop tanks are a little bit of a grief. Without the drop tanks, however, this is one of the best 7.3s in the entire game. Good maneuverability, good excel, good guns, decent speed. Overall, this thing at 7.3 without the drop tanks is absolutely criminal. Then we have the F-86, F-25. Very well-rounded plane. Same as the F-35 at the start here. And if you want a guide on how to fly these things, I made a 38-minute video on the F-35 to just give you a bit of a rundown on how to play these sabers. And then for the time being at least, now this might get fixed in the future, this thing right now has infinite web. So if you're on it quickly and you want to grind out tier 5 and 6 very quickly, maybe tier 4 as well, talismaning this thing will mean that you will get an absolutely great experience. This thing is incredibly brain dead to play with the infinite web right now. The excel is insane, the turn is insane, the guns are okay, they're not the best, but at 7.7 it is more than sufficient. Just run it on about 10 to 12 minutes of fuel, run web the entire match, and you are going to be cooking. Now, if they ever remove the infinite weapon on this thing, I wouldn't talisman it anymore. It's still a fun plane, it's still a pretty decent plane, but if you are looking for a grinder, I wouldn't recommend it if this thing ever loses its infinite web and goes back to only 90 seconds. Then we have tier 6, and this one was kind of rough to pick from because everything is kind of shit. I think that the best thing to buy here is a talisman for the F8U. If you really want something in tier 6, I wouldn't go for the A10. I did pick it here. I did drop it in here because if you really want to ground pound and you don't care about anything beyond tier 7, it's a decent plane. But at the in most games, you're going to have a little bit of an issue with the A10 in the sense of by the time you get to the middle of the map, the game is already over and you're either going to lose so fast that you're going to get swamped before you reach the targets, or what's going to happen very often as well is that your team kills them so quickly that by the time you kill 2 ground units, the tickets are already counting down, which is a little bit annoying. But then we have the AV-8C, which is more of a climb straight in, drop 2 missiles, and that's your game type beat. It has flares, it's decently survivable, the climb rate is insanely good, meaning that you can actually get up and over. The issue is that at 9.7 you start running into some radar missiles already, and if you climb straight in or they 180 you, you're probably gonna have an absolutely terrible time. It's a decent grinder, but the 2 AIM-9Gs with the flares means that you can actually somewhat play the game and get very reliable kills. Because the AIM-9Gs, when you don't have flares, are an absolute pain in the ass to counter. And then we have the kind of Focke-Wulf 190 A8 of this battle rating. It's the F2. Incredibly responsive, very well-rounded plane, but it's all about the cannons. The cannons right now are kind of hit and miss, but I did want to talk about it because, of course, in a year time, a lot can change. If the guns are still good, or if the guns turn out to be good in the future, this is a great plane, the Talisman. But right now, I'd probably stay clear of it because 9 or 8.7 is not the best BR to play. It's not absolutely terrible. Most of the games are against 9.0 and 9.3, and a lot of the 9.3s and 9.0s have been decreased in BR. At least the Ajit is gone, but we'll talk about that later. And of course, it's the best plane in the game, so I have to just look at it in this video. Isn't she just absolutely pretty? Then we have Tier 7. Again, kind of in the same boat as we've always been. We have the F5C and the F4S. But the F4S right now, with the new 13.0s, we have Fox 3 missiles, we have planes like the Su-33, the Su-27, and up tiers are pretty common. I wouldn't really get this one anymore. It's a pretty decent premium, but the Sparrows are becoming less and less powerful because people start to realize how easy they are to deal with. It's a good grinder, but it's not a particularly good plane. The F5C, it doesn't really have anything going for it offensively other than the guns, but it's incredibly survivable, it's very maneuverable, and it's pretty easy to play once you get the aim down. Now, the guns aren't the best, but they are more than enough if you manage to get people slow enough to dogfight you, and very often they will. Then we have the F-8E, which I think is the best plane in the lineup. It has 4 good missiles, it has a very good flight performance, it's not the fastest, but the maneuverability is good, it has flares, it's only 10.7, and the fact that you actually have good missiles means that you can actually kind of start playing the game at this battle rating. Not having good missiles is a little bit of an L, but this thing is actually as good offensively as defensively, other than the fact, of course, that it's not the best when it comes to actually running people down. Everyone can kind of run away from you, you can barely go over Mach on the deck, which is a little bit of a nuisance, but other than that, this thing is incredibly powerful. You have the 2 A10s, you have the AIM-9M Slinger at 11.7, and we have the A10A late, and it's the same thing as I talked about with the A10A over here. You're just gonna be too late very often, which is why I don't really recommend these things completely, but 4 AIM-9Ls or 4 AIM-9Ms at this kind of a battle rating isn't really a bad thing to have. And now we have Tier 8, where I will say we're starting to get to a point where Tier 8s are worth putting some talismans on. Last year I didn't even include them. This year I definitely am. We have the F-18C early, which I think is pretty okay as a grinder. Now, I'm gonna be upfront about it. It's not the best plane at this BR, especially if you get up-tiered into like 13.3, which is very common, or 13.7, God forbid. The plane isn't the best. Offensively, the AIM-7Ps are pretty strong, but you can still roll them. And the Heatseekers don't have IRCCM. Of course they don't at 12.7. It's a decent plane, but I wouldn't really buy it. But if you really want to buy a Tier 8 premium, I will say that the F-18C early is better than the F-20 because it has AIM-7Ps and it has a lot more missiles. And even though the F-20 has better acceleration, I think that the F-18C is a much more well-rounded plane. And then here we have the actual best plane to put something on. It's the F-18A. At 12.3, it's just a bit lower, but it's enough lower to the point where you don't get pulled into full up tiers. You don't get pulled into those lobbies that are completely filled with 13.3s. Because when you get pulled into 13.3, you can only see a maximum of 4. This plane is pretty enjoyable to play. It's insanely good. But it's slightly worse than the F-18C when it comes to the overall package. However, the lower BR makes more than up for it. The only issue is that it's again not a premium, which is a little bit of a kick in the nuts. And then we arrive at Germany. And Germany is a lot easier because it doesn't have nearly as many planes to choose from as the American and Russian lines. For Tier 1, I would just skip it overall. You have the Macaroni CL-42, which isn't available for most of you. And the Heinkel 100, which lacks firepower, but overall has incredible performance. So if you really want to pick something, I just pick the Heinkel. Then for Tier 2, there's a pretty decent lineup. Now, it's hard to choose from these. We have the 109T2, which is essentially a slightly worse E4, but it's a premium, and it's an incredibly good grinder if you really want a low tier bully plane. But then we also have the Yak 1, which is a higher multiplier. So probably I'd say this is the better grinder, the better plane, but it's kind of a toss-up. The Yak 1B is faster. It's a more boom and zoomy plane. It's still incredibly agile, but it's not going to beat the 109 in a low speed fight. So it's going to be a toss-up. It depends on what you want. Then we have the 109 F2 and the F1. The F1 is a slightly lower battle rating, and the F2 has the 15mm, which actually hits about as hard as the 20mm right now. So if you care about the gun, I think that this is going to be the better plane. You can shoot more, the velocity is higher, it's incredibly easy to aim, and it again does the same amount of damage basically, but it's a slightly higher BR. Again, it's up to you to choose, but these three planes are all in the same league. The 109 E4 is more of the low speed version of the F1. It's more about dogfighting, less ammo than the F2 yet again, but it has two guns instead of one, but they are in the wings and they can be a little bit unreliable because of that. We have MG FFMs, same as with this one. It leaves a little bit to be desired sometimes, but overall it's still one of the best 3.0s that you can find. Now we have the E1, which is just a low tier club machine, and we have the A1, which again is the high speed brother of the F2 again. So it's the rolly, divey, gunny plane that can basically do a little bit of everything. It's not that much of an energy fighter because you are going to be lower than most of your opponents, at least Spitfires and stuff like that. And then these planes are incredibly annoying to deal with. If you get above people in this thing, it's an absolute club machine. Then we have an honorable mention, the Stuka D5. It's a cannon boat. You spawn at high altitude, you kill some bombers, you full commit head on 2 or 3 guys, you get 12 kills, and then you go die and go into the next game. This thing is not very consistent in terms of how many kills you get, but it's very consistent in getting 1, 2, maybe 3 kills, and then dying to go next. Then we have tier 3. The Blommenvos 155B1 is, in my opinion, the best thing that you can play here. Good rewards and an incredibly good flight performance. The issue is that it's kind of slow, but the firepower as well as the turn and stall speed are incredibly good. It's a joy to play. I should make a new video on this thing relatively soon. Then we have the F4, which is one of my all-time favorites. Not much to say about it. I would remove the gun ports actually. I'm not sure why they're on. I think I was playing ground RB. Well-rounded plane. Good climb. Pretty agile. It's not the most agile, but the stall control is so damn good that if you know how to use your nose at like 100 kilometers an hour, how to flip your plane and do counterattacks like that, this thing is insanely good. One of the best 4.0s that you can find in the game, and probably one of the most enjoyable 109s to play overall. Then we have the D9, which is more of a supportive type of plane. It's fast, it climbs pretty well, it rolls well, it pulls well at high speed, it has pretty good firepower, but the issue is that it's kind of bricky at medium to low speed, and while the engine is strong enough, at 5.0 there are a lot of planes that will be able to get above you and kind of sit above and behind you until you eventually die if you don't have someone to back you up with, or if you don't just straight up abuse some game mechanics. But in general, it's a pretty damn good plane. If your team is alive, the second you're last alive, this thing becomes a bit of a struggle bus, and that's why I would pick it behind the F4 and the BV155. The 155 is also a big contender here because it's a premium, but keep in mind this thing is not going to be on sale because it's a marketplace vehicle. We have tier 4, which is a little bit easier. We have the D13. Same deal really as with the D9. Same BR, better firepower. Kind of a supportive plane. Good with a team, bad alone. Well, not bad, but in a full down tier you can still club absolutely everyone. The second you get into 5.0 till 5.7, run into a Yak 3U and tell me how it went when you're the last one left. You're not going to have a very good time. Good plane, very well rounded, but you need a team to operate it. Then we have the other way around. We have firepower only with an air spawn. You just want to go straight in and gun down as many things as you can. Doesn't matter if it's the sun, the moon, and the Empire State Building, or if you just want to gun down 7 people in the first head-on, and then limp back home with a singular engine that's probably leaking all kinds of fluids. Good plane for grinding, not the best plane when it comes to actually playing the game. Now we have the 109 G6, which is in my opinion one of the best 109s that you can play together with the F4. Fixes the overheating issue of the F4, slightly less maneuverable, but the engine on this thing is insanely good. Not much to say about it. It's the iconic, kind of most authentic BF109 experience that you will find in War Thunder most likely. Then again, we have the 190 A8, where we want to use the airspawn to just fly straight in and gun down as many people as we can in the shortest time possible. We aren't really concerned with staying alive here. We're just concerned about getting as many people down to the deck and into the hangar as we possibly can. Then we have the TAR 152H, and personally I probably put it like this. We'll go for the A1U4 first. This thing at 6.3 has incredible performance. It's able to kill tanks and planes alike. It's a great grinder, but you need some good aim with it. And it's not going to be the most reliable. But you get an airspawn, and at 6.3, hitting props, it's not the hardest thing in the world. It's kind of annoying. You have to get used to it. It has a pretty high potential, but it's not the best off rip when you are a newer player. So I'd stay clear of it. If you're new, if you already use a lot of guns, if you already grinded out like 2 or 3 nations, maybe you have played a lot of RRB and you're pretty good shot. This thing is great, but it's gonna be down to you how good it is. Then we have the TAR 152H1, and same deal as with the other 6.0s. Careful with spending money on 6.0s. If you get up-tiered, you're gonna get clubbed. However, this thing gets a pretty good airspawn, very good flight performance, but the climb rate and the top speed aren't the best. So if the game goes on long enough and people start side climbing, you might have a bit of an issue. But the plane overall is very strong, especially in the 1v1s, maybe even in the 2 or 3v1s if you're above them. This thing doesn't lose speed whatsoever and turns almost as tightly as a Spitfire does. You have Tier 5, and the Seahawk Mark 100, if it's ever on sale, is the absolute no-brainer. If it isn't, we have to go to the MiG-15 BIS. Great, rounded, well-rounded plane. Insane acceleration, insane energy retention, and with the flaps this thing turns on a dime. The main issue is the roll rate together with the 37 and the 23s that are kind of annoying to aim when you're shooting at a Sabre that's rolling at 2000 degrees every nanosecond. Next up is something that you might actually be surprised with. It's the 162A2. Yes, the 162 is actually one of the best planes at 6.0. It's incredibly fast, and against all the props, no one has a chance against this thing. Now, what they can do is simply climb away, and then at worst it turns into a stalemate, but you can zip around the battlefield. It's incredibly fast. It turns pretty damn good. It does lose a lot of speed if you start hammering on the elevators, but it's a very well-rounded plane in the sense that you can deal with about everything, but it's a very one-dimensional playstyle, and I'm not a very big fan of that. Then we have the Jabo 262 with an airspawn, probably the best 262 that you can play here, other than the A2A of course, but that isn't really readily available for many people. It's the one that is at, where is it? Yeah, this one. This one is the best one overall, but this is one that many of you probably won't have because it's extraordinarily expensive. Then we have Tier 6. We have the Gepard, apparently. We have the Seals Mark 6, which I wouldn't really recommend. We have the SPSK and the Limb 5, essentially. The SPSK is good in terms of grinding. You do want to be careful with your loadout because you have a little bit of an issue here. You can either pick flares or you can pick a gun. So the issue is here that you have 2 R60s and you can go all offensively to the point where you can spray people down and get some kills, or you can go for the countermeasures, and now you are only able to get 2 kills at the very most. You have to get in, shoot 2 missiles and get out. You don't want to stay in there when you don't have missiles. You want to make your engagement time as short as possible. I'm more of a fan of running the 23 with a rocket pod. Now, I'm a bit of a freak that way. I just want to have a little bit of both worlds. I want to have flares, I want to have a missile, and I want to have a gun. So this is what I run. Would I recommend this? Probably not, but you have to make up your mind with this one. It's a good grinder because it's a premium. If this wasn't a premium, I wouldn't even have looked at it, and I'd probably just go straight to the Lim 5P or the CL13 Mark 6. The CL13 Mark 6 is more well-rounded. It's easier to play. The guns are easy to use. The flight performance, other than the Ariete, you beat every subsonic in a 1v1. The Lim 5P is slightly dumbed down, but it's also 8.7 with a much more favorable battle rating. It's a MiG-17 with an afterburner and only 23mm. A little bit easier to aim than the MiG-17. It's also faster and has more thrust, but it's also slightly heavier. And you need to carry more fuel because it has an afterburner. But 8.7 is a lot more playable than 9.0 is. So it's going to be completely up to you. Then for tier 7, no brainer, we have the Lazur M. It's a premium, you can grind out everything, and this is one of the better premiums that you can buy in the entire game, because you can circumvent the entire lower tier grind of the German nation, which is kind of annoying to get through at times if you want to do it with premiums and buying stuff. If you're a free-to-play player, Germany is completely fine, but if you really want to buy something, Germany doesn't really have much going for it. Now the MiG-21 MF is, in my opinion, the better plane, because it's a lower BR at 10.3. It's just a lot more forgiving. The thing is that it's not a premium. Then we have the Mirage 3S, which is actually one of my new favorites. The missiles on this thing, the Falcons, are incredibly powerful. And if you watch my video that I made a while ago when this thing dropped, you saw that the missiles very often didn't actually do any damage. That is fixed now. The missiles work perfectly, and these things are incredibly nasty, and people still don't really expect them because not many planes have good radar missiles at this battle rating. They burn incredibly short, their diamond disappears very quickly, and once they burn up or they're out of fuel, they will pull so tightly you don't even know what you're looking at. You barely see the missile, it just pulls 90 degrees and you will get a kill. Then we have the Bissau, same deal as the premium one. But, you know, it's a BIS at 11.0. It's a pretty well-rounded plane. You have 6 missiles if you really want to. But overall, you really just want to make sure that you have the right loadout. Because the one that I'm running now is nothing short, but completely abysmal. So here we go. 6 R60s. They're pretty easily flared. But overall, this is the best thing that you will find at this battle rating. And then we have tier 8. Now I don't have it anymore because my test drive just expired. But the F-18C Hornet is in the same boat as we have with the American one. It's a good plane for grinding at 12.7. The matchmaker is absolutely atrocious. I'm not going to tell you you're going to have much fun in this thing. And I'm not going to tell you there's going to be a great experience. I would say get the Lazur M over the F-18C and then Talisman something down here if they ever add tier 9. But for now, Lazur is more than enough. None of these planes are really worth it other than the Typhoon, and you can get that in another nation anyway. Next up is Russia, and the first pick is going to be the... I'm not even going to try it. It's the Chaika, and it's a good plane because of the rewards, but the rewards are kind of dog shit, so I would say just get the Yak-2 cap. The Yak-2 cap is one of those planes that's incredibly broken at lower battle ratings. Turns well, very good firepower, and it gets a whole ass spawn for no reason whatsoever. No brainer at all. This is one of those bully planes that not many people actually know about, but it's a great way to get to true tier 1. MiG-3, not much to say about it. Airspawn with Berezins. Do I need to elaborate? Then we have the HAR I-153P. No, it's going to be the P29K1. Now, it's not as good as the P29N0. It's slightly heavier, has worse performance, but it's still kind of criminal at 12.7. Yet again, we are looking at a plane with pretty good flight performance, but abysmally bad guns. We have two 50 cals with 200 rounds, only 7 mils in the wings, and then an absolutely abysmal 37, which is even worse than the previous one, because this time around, you only have the default belt. Firepower is lacking. If you want firepower, I want you to look at the I-153P. It turns incredibly well, and at this battle rating, many people don't really know what to do against a plane that doesn't stall turns incredibly tightly, and has pretty damn good guns. The issue is just, it's slow. It doesn't climb very well, it's not fast in a dive, it's not fast in a straight line, and it's a really one-dimensional plane because it can only basically turn in a horizontal type of manner. If people dogfight you, they die. If they don't want to, well, they're just gonna leave you in the dust. Then we have the Yak 1B, which is a more well-rounded plane. It's an incredibly strong 3.0. It has good firepower, good speed, good maneuverability. There's basically everything going for it other than high altitude performance, but at 3.0 this doesn't really come into play all that often. Anyway, this is my go-to. If you don't want a premium, it's one of those planes that really flies itself, and I think is overall just one of the better planes that you can play in the game altogether. Then we have the MiG-315 Burger King. Again, airspan with 3 Berezins. I don't really need to elaborate. Then we have Har Har, and here Russia starts to become slightly stacked. First up, we have the the Yak 3E. It's a Yak 3, it flies itself, good speed, good climb, good turn, good retention. The only thing this thing suffers from is a pretty low rip speed at about 700, and the performance above 5 kilometers is just kind of lacking. But at 4.0 this thing is insanely good. Then we have the ITP, which is all about the guns and the climb rate. It's not the best plane, but it's a plane that's pretty decent. Issue is that both of these are event vehicles, so you can't really buy them on sale, and they are kind of overpriced. But if you have the P63, or if you want to buy it, this is probably the best premium that you can actually purchase on sale. It's a P63. It's pretty fast, it's pretty maneuverable, it climbs pretty well, it's a very well-rounded plane with a good top speed. But again, the guns are gonna be the letdown here. 450 cals with a 37, that doesn't have much going for it. And yet again, you only have the default belt, so half your ammo is completely useless. And then we have the best planes here to really buy, or buy a talisman for. Yak 3, criminal, same thing as the Yak 3E, except it has an extra Berezin. Slightly higher BR as well. Then we have the LA7, which is one of my favorites. Extremely well rounded. It turns well. It's really fast. It doesn't compress whatsoever. And this thing is a medium to high speed monster. At super low speed, the Yak 3 will beat it. But this thing is a plane that can basically fight about everything. It has an answer to every vehicle, basically. And it's an absolute blast to play. Good amount of ammo, good amount of firepower, and I think that this is a great plane for people that are slightly more experienced. I do think that for a newer player the Yak 3 is better, but I think that the LA7 overall in an average Araby match just has a lot going for it. The Yak 3 is one of those planes that has some limitations, but where it isn't limited in, it's extremely strong. With the LA7, it's slightly more balanced. It's a bit of a toss-up. I prefer the Yak 3, but I like the LA7 better in the average Araby match. If it goes very long and you're in a 2v1 or a 1v1, I will prefer the Yak 3. But when it comes to the early stages of the game, the LA7 is just criminal because you can just stay fast, you can turn with everything at high speed, and you have a shitload of ammo, of cannons that actually work decently well. Then we have the Yak 9U, and it's a little bit in the LA7 direction. It's slightly less maneuverable than the Yak 3, but it's faster, it has a very good engine, and it has the, yeah, you guessed it, the M107 engine that you will also find in the hard tier, but we'll get to that in a second. Plane is criminal, it's slightly heavier though, and I wouldn't pick it over the Yak 3 and the LA7, however this thing is an insanely good energy fighter. Then we have the, the P39N0, same deal as the P63 and the P39N0 in the American tree, except it loses the 8mm in the wing. And when I say the same as the P63, I mean the same type of mentality. But this is, again, great flight performance, except it's 3.0, except 2.7. The best P39 when it comes to flight performance. But the worst guns. We don't have the 8mm or the 7mm. And again, the 37 only has the stock belt, meaning that, again, half your ammo is going to be completely useless. Then we have HAR, and the LA7 makes a return. 4.7, it's a premium, probably won't be on sale this time around, but this is a great plane to pick up because it's 4.7, very favorable matchmaking, and it's still incredibly good as I just talked about. Then we have the Yak 3 VK107, which I think is one of the best props in the entire game. Beaten by the Yak 3U, of course, but this one is a premium, and it's just an absolute monster. Climb rate is insane. The turn rate is insane because of that engine. It doesn't lose any speed. The guns are pretty good. Limited ammo, but it's more than enough. The issue is, again, the rip speed and super high altitude performance. The Yak 3 VK107 is the quote-unquote high altitude version of the Yak 3U. However, the Yak 3U is only worth between 4 to 6.5 kilometers. Anything outside of that, the VK is worse. But it's still incredibly good and has an answer to about everything that can just straight up run away from it. They have the Spitfire Mark 9, also not going to be on sale most likely. But if it ever does come on sale, you can revert back to this. It's an LF Mark 9, and not much to talk about. It's a Spitfire, climbs well, turns well. It's actually pretty fast. It goes 575 on the deck. But yeah, it's a premium. That's why it's here. It's a good premium. That's why it's here. Same deal as with the D9. It's again a Focke-Wulf 190 D9. Great in the team. Not so great when it comes to flying it alone or when you're the last one alive, unless you're in the full down tier or against absolutely brain dead enemies, and luckily there's an abundance of those. Then we have the Yak 3U, which I think is one of the like top 3 props in the entire game. It's absolutely disgusting. This thing should be 6.3 in my opinion, even though the rip speed is so low. The climb, the turn, the excel, the top speed, it's all insane. Again, the only limiting factor here is going to be the rip speed and the amount of ammo that you carry. But this thing bullies about every prop in the game. And I don't really know a single prop that would win the 1v1 versus this thing. Especially on the deck. Something like a P-51H can kind of play around it. But you have to merge with it if you want to kill it. And the second you merge with this thing, it wins. Even A7Ms, even A6Ms, it doesn't outturn it, but it just has so much more energy going into the merge, and it maintains it so much better than those planes that it basically drains the balls of everything it runs into. Then we have the SU-6, which is more of a meme pick, but it's one of my favorite props in the game. It's not the best, but it can dogfight a lot of enemies, and the VYA-23s are some of the best cannons that you will find in prop tiers. Good amount of ammo, insanely good velocity, and these things hit like absolute trucks. It's a bit of a meme pick, but it's a pretty good meme pick. Now we have the I-225, which is, again, also one of my favorite props in the game actually, but it's a very limiting playstyle. It's all about low speed, low IAS, high altitude combat. This thing is insanely good at low speed with the flaps down. It can dogfight about everything. But it's very limiting, and I don't think it's very noob-friendly because it compresses insanely bad. It's kind of the same as something like the P38K in that regard, but it has good firepower, good climb, insanely good low speed, but the second you go over 550, this thing turns into an absolute brick. And because of that, I probably won't recommend it to newer players. But if you are very familiar with the game, this thing is pretty damn good. And then with the Yak 3P, it's a Yak 3 with more cannons, not much to say about it. It's more of the fragmobile out of this lineup, but I still think that the LA7 overall is the better plane, especially considering that it's premium on top of it. But it's the same deal as the Yak 3 versus the LA7 that I talked about in the Har tier. It's up to you to choose. It's a great plane, it's a good pick, but at 5.0, you know, it's starting to show its weaknesses a little bit more, but the Yak 3 is just such a versatile plane that it shouldn't really impact you all too much. Then we get to the Har tier, where it becomes a little bit easier. We have the MiG-15 BIS and the Su-11, which it's up to you. I think that the MiG-15 BIS is better, the BIS-ish, but it might not be on sale. So we want to just take a look at the Su-11. Insanely good acceleration, insanely good retention, pretty damn maneuverable because it retains so much energy, but you want to be careful that you don't end up overspeeding and overshooting because it is just so insanely fast at the battle rating. I think that the F-2H, for example, is better than this plane, but other than that, this thing is essentially uncontested and incredibly powerful. The only real issue is going to be the guns and just you might catch yourself out with how fast you're going and then you overshoot someone and they will just gun you down. That's also a benefit of this plane, that it's an absolute tank. For some reason this thing doesn't like dying. Use that however you will. Then we have the LA200. I'm not a fan of this thing. I absolutely loathe it. But an 1100 top speed on sea level at 7.7 with 337s, you need to respect it. It's pretty maneuverable. The acceleration is insanely good. The top speed is some of the highest that you'll see at the battle rating. The issue is that once you start getting up tiered into 8.3, sabers and stuff will start to eat you up. But at 7.7, it's criminal. Not sure why this thing is at 7.7, but it's a chore to fly. It's a boat. I don't think it's very fun. I hate it, but it's good objectively. And if you are a fan of the playstyle, yes, this thing is good enough to talisman. MiG-15 BIS, it's the same thing as the BIS is essentially, slightly worse. Same deal as the MiG-15 BIS in Germany. Insane Excel. Good turn, good retention. Just the issue is the roll rate at high speed and very low speed, as well as the 37mm and 23s, which is a little bit of an awkward combo to actually aim. Then we have har. We have the MiG-17, but I hate it. But the Su-7B at 9.0 is insane. It's fast as shit. It has insanely fast acceleration. This thing is essentially untouchable. And if you play this thing right now, you're probably going to get 20-0, even if you have never played the game before. All you need to be wary of is that it's an absolute brick shithouse. It's insanely hard, insanely large. It's easy to hit if you don't go fast. When you go Mach 1, no one is really hitting you. It's fast enough to dodge missiles. It's fast enough to dodge every subsonic. Even if they get like 200 meters behind you, you can just kind of flop around. And you will accelerate and outrun them so fast that they only have like 1 to 2 seconds to actually hit you. The MiG-17 is the bigger brother of the MiG-15. It's slightly better. It's slightly worse in the 1v1, but it's faster, compresses less, the roll is more manageable, and it's an overall more rounded plane. But the main issue is still there in the form of the 37 with 23mm combo. Now we have two mentions here. We have the Su-25K. I wouldn't buy this thing personally, but it's a pretty decent grinder. You have two R60Ms, you have a very good gun, and you have good missiles. Those are the R60s that I just talked about, actually. I'm sorry, this video is going to go way too long. I apologize. Oh, there goes my voice. Su-25, I mean, it's a ground pounder, kind of in the same boat as the A-10. It's pretty decent. It's not the best, but it's a pretty damn good grinder. It's not the best plane, however. At least not if you get up tiered. Down tier, on tier, it can kind of hold its own. It's decently fast, pretty good acceleration, and actually pretty maneuverable if you're completely clean. If you're strapping it with bombs and rockets though, don't expect to beat anything once it gets past your nose. Then we have the MiG-21S, which is a bit of a hard one for me. It's an insanely good plane at the battle rating. The issue is that you do not have flares, and at 9.7 without flares, you might have a bit of an issue. Now, if you know how to navigate a map without any countermeasures, this plane is pretty damn good, but I just want to warn you that it's not going to be the easiest plane to play if you aren't very familiar with the game itself. Then we have Bear, pretty easy, MiG-23 ML. It's the premium that you can get. The R-24s are going to be your main killing power. It's not the best plane anymore, but the radar with missile combo means that you will very easily get 2 kills basically every game. The R-60Ms leave a little bit to be desired. The flight performance also isn't the best anymore, and neither are the R60MKs at 11.7. But if you just want to get 2 free kills, this thing is pretty damn good. Then we have the SMT, which I think is the best MiG-21 that you can play at 10.3, especially. It's due to the battle rating that it's so good. The BIS is of course going to be the better plane, but this is going to have the favorable matchmaker, and it still has enough firepower to contest with the BIS. The issue is just that the BIS has so much more trust that it's a much better vehicle, but it's not worth 2 entire BR bumps. But I'll still put it right behind it, because guess what? There's not much going for it in tier Bear for Russia. Now we have the MLD, which is simply the better ML. Better flight performance. It has a leading edge slats, meaning that it turns tighter, loses slightly less or slightly more speed, but it's again about the 2 R-24s with the radar set. And then lastly we have the B tier. Not sure what that means, but we only have 2 planes here. on one plane, really. The SU-33 is Water Talisman, but I wouldn't Talisman any of these. I don't think that tier 8 is the thing that you want to play. And on that note, my game crashed, and we can go to the next nation. Next up is Great Blenheim, which is the only real plane that you want at tier 1, but we're just going to skip it. Tier 2 is a little bit more forgiving. We have the Spitfire Mark II Venture, and it's a premium, it's a Spitfire. Not the most amount of firepower, not the best plane overall, but it's the best premium that you can get in tier 2. Then we have the Typhoon Mark 1A, which is my go-to pick for tier 2 in Great Blenheim. Good firepower, good speed, good turn. Roll rate is kind of iffy and the climb rate isn't the best. But at 3.0 this thing is still a bit of a menace. Because it really catches people off guard that, well, they've played the game for 2 hours and they don't even know what a Typhoon is. So I can't really blame them. Then we have the Havoc. Not the best plane, but it's a pretty decent premium. The rewards aren't the best. If you compare them to this one, it's almost double. I wouldn't really bother with it. But it's a pretty decent premium if you just want to fly straight in, use your air spawn, bomb something, get some ground units. But the Sunderland, oh boy, the Sunderland. I made a video on this thing a few weeks ago. I'll put it in the description as well. Basically made a video on every plane that I'm talking about today. But the Sunderland is a pretty good meme. Not the best plane, but it's incredibly tanky. It has good gun coverage. And at 1.7, you will just bully the ever-living hell out of the entire lobby. Then we go to tier 3. We have the Mustang Mark 1A, and this thing is all guns. I talked about it in the American tech tree. It's slightly different, but it's basically the same. It's all about the cannons. It has decent speed, an okay climb rate. The maneuverability is alright, but it doesn't have the power to sustain it. So you are able to dive in, pull in, get a quick shot in, and if you aim at all and you're anywhere near the target, you're just going to obliterate them. These cannons are insane, and that's all this plane is about. And at tier 3, 3.7, that is all that you need. Then we have the Hellcat Mark II. Now the Hellcat isn't fantastic, but the F6Fs are actually pretty damn okay now at 3.3. You have good firepower. The turn rate is kind of okay. I'm gonna drop a video about a week from now where I get 9 kills in this thing. I'll just show you how good it is. It's not the best plane and it's very punishable, but it actually stalls pretty late. It turns quite okay and the top speed is good, as well as the dive speed. Just the climb rate and the energy overall isn't the best, but it's a very flyable plane that has pretty decent rewards. But again, the Mustang just blows it completely out of the water. Then we have the 2 Typhoons, and it's about the cannons, the turn rate, and that's about it. It's a very well-rounded plane to a certain degree. But again, the roll rate is going to hamper you a little bit. But it's fast. It climbs pretty okay. And it turns incredibly well. And I prefer this thing over a Spitfire any day of the week. And I absolutely loathe fighting these things. Especially because it's pretty easy to fly. The only real drawback, again, is going to be the climb rate and the roll rate. But they're pretty manageable because the rest of the plane is just so damn good. The other Typhoon, well, we'll talk about that in another video. They have the Spitfire Mark 9. It's the more agile brother of the Typhoon. It's lighter, it climbs better, but it's not faster. It doesn't have the firepower, and overall, I'm not the biggest fan of this Spitfire, but it is one of the better Spitfires in the game, tier for tier, together with the LF Mark 9. But the lack of speed just makes it so that I'm not a big fan of them. I like to have speed and maneuverability, and I don't mind sacrificing a little bit of roll rate if that means that I can catch someone, and after I caught them, I just turn with them and kill them anyway. They have the Mosquito NF Mark II. They added this last patch, and it's a great plane. I made a video about a week or two ago that I got a 10 kill game and 1 flyout in this thing. It ended a little bit sadly, in a sad way. But we're not going to talk about that one. We're just going to talk about the fact that I got 10 kills. It was a little bit lucky, I admit. But it's a great plane. You get an air defense spawn. You get 600 kilograms of weight shedding over the other Mosquitoes. And while it might still not win against other 3.7s in a head-to-head dogfight, the air defense spawn means that you start at 2 kilometers with some speed. So you essentially start at 2,500 meters when they get off the runway, which is an incredibly strong thing at the start of a match. Now, during the later stages of the game, it starts to diminish a little bit in terms of effectiveness, but it's still good enough. And if you are a more experienced player, you can make this thing last the entire match. If you're a newer player, this thing is insanely strong in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the opening stages of the game. Then we have tier 4, and tier 4 is incredibly stacked, but I can't say anything else but get the Wyvern S4. 650 kilometers an hour on the deck at 4.7. That's faster than some 6.3s. No one is catching you. You get an air spawn. You get 1200 rounds of Hispano Mark 5. And it's a boat though. Like it's a brick. Don't try dogfighting with it. It's not gonna go very well. But this is a great grinder. You can kill aircraft at the start of the game by flying straight in. Go so fast that you outrun the entire enemy team. And then you can go ground pound, or you can kill more enemies. It's an insanely good plane. It's kind of boring to play in my opinion. If you want to play it smartly, I just fly this thing like a absolutely suicidal maniac. And you will get very good results that way. But keep in mind, this thing is kind of restricting. And what you have to do is just keep it in a straight line and stay as fast as possible. Same deal to a certain degree with the Hornet Mark 1. It's slightly worse than the Hornet Mark 3 in my opinion. But it also has some perks. So the engines are less powerful. The 1834 versus 2122. Because it lacks the high octane fuel. But it also carries less internal fuel, making it lighter. So it is slightly more maneuverable. And the climb rates are actually somewhat similar. The Hornet Mark 3 during the later stages of the game starts to become better and better and better. But the early game, they're pretty similar, and it's all about the climb rate and the airspan as well as the speed. This is the purest energy fighter that you will find, and I love these things. I'm a big fan of planes with good power and good speed, where you can actually out-dogfight people by using energy, while they turn much better than you. I made a plethora of videos on the Hornets. I absolutely love these things, but I will say that if you're not the most experienced player, these are just great for early game rushing in, killing bombers and killing some AFK people. And after that, it's all about boom and zooming and hoping that your team pulls its own weight. Then the Plaga Spitfire LF Mark 9C. C. I love my voice. It's a pretty good plane. It's an LF Mark 9. I already talked about this thing a few times and I'll talk about it in a minute again. But it's a great premium if it is available, because I'm not entirely sure if it still is. Then we have the Strike Master Mark 88. And you might be surprised by how good this thing is. And I know it's a marketplace vehicle, but if you have it, I urge you to try it out and save yourself some money. Yes, the guns leave a little bit to be desired, but you have a shitload of ammunition. And the plane is good enough to use said ammunition. With the gun ports especially, they have basically zero drag. The plane is fast. It climbs okay, it gets an airspan, but it's actually pretty damn maneuverable, and you can hang with a lot of props in a dogfight, provided it doesn't go long, because in the long term the engine isn't powerful enough, but you mostly merge so fast that you have plenty of energy to spare, and the energy retention on this thing is good enough to the point where you can actually survive a couple of turns. Then next up, you have the Spitfire Mark 14C. It's a Griffin Spit, and I don't think they're that great anymore due to the shift in meta when it comes to War Thunder. Everyone is on the deck, no one is at high altitude anymore. It's all about those quick, low altitude fights, and this is a high altitude specialized Spitfire. Not a big fan of these anymore, but they're not bad planes by any means, so I'll put it in this list regardless. Then we have another Spitfire LF Mark 9, but it's not a premium. And we have the Hornet Mark 3, which I just talked about with the Hornet Mark 1. Next up is the Meteor Mark 8 G41K. Now, all of these two planes are the same thing, except the Mark 8 Reaper is a premium and it just has incredibly high multipliers. The Mark 8 Reaper is one of those planes that's not very fast, but everything it catches is gonna be at a massive danger. This thing eats up everything that's slower than it. Now, sure, the ME163 and the how do we call that thing? The Key 200 will absolutely ruin this thing. But other than that, if you catch it, it dies. It's fast enough. It's incredibly fast in a dive. It's extremely ergonomic. It's so easy to fly, to maneuver, to aim, everything. This thing is basically like flying a mouse cursor. And you out-dogfight basically everything that you run into. The only real issue is, again, you're gonna be your top speed. Everyone can just run away from you, but this thing is an absolute menace at 8.0. Even back in the days at 9.0 against Sabres, this thing could pull its own weight. It's pretty damn good. And nowadays, you actually have a fuel slider. So you don't have to choose between 20 minutes or 7. You can actually just say, I'm going to pick 11 or 12. And you're going to have an absolutely incredibly well-performing aircraft. And the same thing goes for this one, but it doesn't have premium. Then we have the Sea Meteor Mark III. It's the lower BR version. It's kind of like the SU-11, except it's a lot slower and it rips pretty early. But the energy on this thing is insane. And while it does turn a good bit worse than the Meteor Mark III, it's still a Meteor Mark III. It's navalized, it's slightly heavier, and you definitely feel the weight. But the engines in this thing are pretty damn insane. Now, if I remember correctly, yeah, they're not the same. My bad. But yeah, that's tier 5 onto tier 6. And here we can actually start recommending the GR1 again. How long has that been since I've talked about this vehicle in any positive manner? The SRAMs right now, the SRAMs, or however you want to pronounce it, are incredibly powerful right now. I made a SRAM Hunter video, the Hunter F6, a little while ago, and I'll probably do a video on the GR1 as well. It climbs well. It's decently quick for a 9.7. It's not very fast, but it accelerates pretty well. It's okay in maneuverability, but the energy retention is incredibly bad, and it has nothing going for it when it comes to defense. If someone gets on you with a missile, you're dead. This thing doesn't pull well enough. You might be able to dodge one missile, but that costs you so much energy that you're now going so slow that the second missile is 100% going to kill you. But we have 4 SRAMs, and right now, if someone doesn't have flares, you lock onto them and you shoot, they are likely going to be dead. These missiles are insane, and that's the only reason I recommend it. Don't expect to live very long. Don't expect to carry matches in it, but it's incredibly good when it comes to the early game where you can dive in, shoot 4 missiles off, probably die yourself, but go home with 3 to 4 kills pretty easily. We have the Jaguar GR1, which I recommend sometimes. This is a bit of a trade-off. So the Hunter has the worst flight performance, but at the same time is better. I'm not entirely sure which I would recommend. I'd probably go with the Hunter F6. We have 4 SRAMs. We have flares in the form of rockets, but we are a bit of a brick and we don't have flares. The GR1 only has 2 missiles. They're AIM-9Gs, however, which are very good. We have less cannon rounds, but it's a lot faster. It accelerates better and is more maneuverable. However, in the long term, this thing is going to be losing many dogfights because it pisses away energy like the Harrier does. It's a little bit better in that regard. But this is the best one in terms of overall flight performance, I think. And overall kit, it's very well balanced. Whereas the Hunter F6 and the GR1 are more focused on offensive weapons and trying to kill as many people as quickly as possible. Whereas the Jaguar is more about winning the war of attrition. Then we have tier 7. We have the F-4 Junk. And I'm still not a massive fan of this thing. And I would say to just skip it altogether. Because we actually have a serviceable tier 8 right now. But the F-4 Junk is a decent pick. I would say skip it altogether, however. It's not worth the money when the Bison is just $5 extra, especially when it goes on sale. We have the Jaguar GR1A, which is essentially the only thing I would recommend when you look at the tier 7 for Britain altogether. There's really not much in here. It's all kind of shit. So this is basically the only flyable plane in this entire tier, and that just makes the Bison even more worth it in my opinion, because you're able to skip these 2 tiers, because these 2 tiers are not very fun to play. It's a lot better now with the SRAM buff, but the Bison is gonna be your main pick when it comes to the Great Blenheim tech tree, in my opinion. The Bison is all offense. The flight performance is lacking, but man, these missiles are pretty damn good. We have an R-73 combo with an R-27R combo, and while the missiles aren't the best, they're still pretty damn good. Much better than AIM-7s, much better than AIM-9Ls. And the radar, while it leaves a little bit to be desired, it's good enough. And getting 2 to 3 kills in this thing shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. And while the battle rating for the airframe is definitely a little bit too high, it's still a MiG-21 bis. It has good acceleration. It's a delta wing that can pull very tightly. You will be able to out-dogfight people because you have an HMD with R-73s. And the second you get on them, most people at this battle rating don't have the knowledge or the kit to flare you properly. Next up, we have Japan, which is honestly pretty easy. Tier 1, I mean, not much to talk about. We have the Ki-27 and the Ki-109, which is a bit of a meme machine. It's not very noob friendly, but it's incredibly fun in the use, and I've also, of course, made a video on it. Next up, we have Tier 2, which is probably the easiest one to get through, but also very hard because there's just so much to pick from. We have the F-5NA E7, which is kind of like a slightly less maneuverable Spitfire with an actual functional engine and actual good guns. And then we have the F-1A, which is, I think, slightly harder but also easier to play, because all you really need to do is keep it fast. It's a very easy plane to play if you just know your one trick, which is going fast in a straight line with good firepower and an actual damage model. This thing is all about zooming in and out, whereas this thing is about dogfighting. So this thing wins the dogfight for you, and you can take a shot every time I say this thing. But the F-1A is very one-dimensional, where you just have to worry about your speed, and if you do that, you'll probably win every engagement. Whereas with the E7, you actually have to put a little bit of thought into actually dogfighting your enemy, although most of the enemies that you dogfight will simply lose because you are in the battle plane. The Key 44, the Key 44, and as well as the Key 44 are all some of the most busted planes in the game. Which one you want to play is up to you. It's about the cannon and the engine, but it also, of course, depends on the matchmaker that you're looking at. I'm not going to recommend one over the other. I'm honestly not entirely sure which one would be objectively the best, but I'm a big fan of having better performance, even if it means that I'm going to have a slightly higher battle rating, because I have more to work with. Personally, I'd go with the 371, but the 271 you might run into worse planes, worse players, and it might be a better time for you. Also, the multiplier is basically the same, so you don't really have to worry about that one. And then next up, we have Tier 3, where the first slot is empty, as you can tell, because it's a plane that I don't have anymore. I used to have it. But it's the B7A2 Homare 23. It's incredibly strong. You get an airspan, and it's kind of like the SB2C in that regard, except the 1v1 performance is actually better than that of a F-109 F4, than an XP50. This thing is criminal, and not really sure why this thing is at 3.7 with an airspan, but you know, here we are. It's a good plane. If you have it, or if you want to pick it up, feel free to do so. However, this thing is not exactly cheap, so be careful with that one. Then next up, you have the best plane in the lineup in terms of raw performance for the battle rating. Is the P-51 C11NT. Incredibly fast, good climb rate, good maneuverability, but again, it's lacking in the firepower department because it only has 450 cals in total. The belts aren't horrid, but 450 cals on a plane that can't really go slow with many enemies that it runs into is a little bit of a nuisance. However, because you are in the Japanese tech tree, you never run into zeros and A7Ms and stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about those super maneuverable planes other than the Spitfires, but those are a lot more manageable than a zero when you have literal zero firepower. Next up is the B7A2, same deal as the premium one, although it is slightly worse, but it doesn't really matter because you still get an airspan with good guns. And then we have the J2M2, which is still one of the best planes in the entire game when it comes to props. Insanely good climb rate. This thing climbs the same as something like a P-51H on web. It out dogfights about everything, and with the flaps at low speed, this thing outpulls about any plane it can run into. It might feel a little bit bricky, but this thing is all about that sustained turn time. And for a Japanese plane, this is a kind of the opposite way of thinking. It's about the engine, not so much the wings, whereas with the other planes, it's the other way around. If you're used to this thing, it is incredibly good. Now, the guns aren't fantastic, but you still have 200 rounds in total over to 20mm, which is pretty respectable. It's not as good as it used to be, but it also used to be 3.0 whenever it got added. So, you know, kind of a high bar to pass. Low bar, actually. Next up is Tier 4, where, again, we are incredibly stacked and kind of spoiled. We have the A7M1, which I think is the best one to pick up here. Good multipliers, good plane overall. It's well-rounded for a zero. Kind of a zero. I know it's not a zero, but it's a zero. You know what I mean. The Repu, it's decently fast. It's actually pretty fast in the dive. It still turns slightly worse than a zero, but good enough because it is heavier. It has a good climb rate. It has a good engine. And while the A7M2 is better when it comes to the actual flight performance, it is a premium. It's at a lower BR. And overall, these are some of the best planes in the Japanese line that you can find. Then we have the J2M5, which is the same thing as the J2M3, or J2M2 with slightly different supercharger gearing. What happened here? That's still a good plane. The issue is the Type 5 cannons right now are incredibly inconsistent. They're inaccurate. The spread is horrid because in the middle of the wing, and the guns half the time just poof off the enemy's wing. Not a great plane to fly right now. I do want to talk about it every time because the performance and the gun combo is amazing if it works. The issue is right now, I don't think it works enough to warrant actually picking it up. And then we have the 190A5. It's a lower BR thing where you just have the firepower. You don't have an air spawn. The plane is respectable. It's not as overpowered as it used to be, but it's still a pretty decent pick if you actually want to grind something out. Now, if I have to go by actual performance, not counting premium, I would skip this thing all the way to the back because I do think that it's the worst performing one out of this entire list. The A7M2 is just the better brother of the A7M1. The J2M3 is a slightly better J2M2, but it has a lot more ammo and a lot more cannon rounds. That's the same thing. A lot more cannons and a lot more ammo. This thing is just a lot more deadly in that regard, but at 5.7, we are starting to push the limits of how good this plane actually is, but still, the flight performance in itself is incredible. But keep in mind at 5.7, you're going to run into stuff like Yak-3Us, which are just going to send you straight to the Shadow Realm. Next up is the Ki 84Co, which is probably still one of my favorite planes of the war. I don't really like playing them anymore, but they feel incredible, they look incredible, and it's one of my favorite designs when it comes to World War II. It feels a bit like a slightly worse Spitfire, but it has more firepower, which is a good thing. Tier 5 is also pretty easy because we actually only have the JSDEF F86 F40 if it's available. Incredibly good pick. However, 9.0 is kind of pushing it. If this thing ever goes to 8.7, this thing would be an absolute no-brainer because then you have to choose between the F30 and the F40, and the F40 is a much better plane, but the F30 actually gets a very good matchmaker. This thing is actually very playable, and it's incredibly consistent if you are able to play it. And again, I made a 40-minute guide on the F-Sabers if you need one. And then we have the F84G. It's not the best plane, but you get an air spawn with pretty decent guns. It's incredibly fast, and overall as a grinder, it's good. In terms of flight performance, I put it probably all the way over here. Then we have tier 6, where again I would say just get the JSDEF because this tier is kind of horrid. We have the T2 early, which is okay. I mean, you can use the flare pod with rockets, but at 9.7 it's not gonna be the best. However, it did get something recently. The last time around it didn't get that. It's 2 AIM-9Ps. Are these fantastic? No, but at 8 or 9.7, this is somewhat respectable. The issue kind of stems from the fact that when the Harrier shows up with SRAMs, you're probably going to get your ass eaten. And personally, not a big fan of it. If you're into that stuff, this plane is okay. It's incredibly fast. It goes about 1325 or 1360 on the deck. It's insane, but it's still a T2. You turn once, you fall out of the air. It's kind of the same deal as with the Jaguars. Then we have the Alpha Jets. The Alpha Jet at 8.7 I think is the best pick in terms of grinding. It's all about the flares and the cannon, but the cannon doesn't really work right now. The plane itself got a buff in the recent patch. They're actually pretty good now. I would personally go, and this is a bit against my my character, I would go for this one. Is it an absolutely dogshit plane? Is it an attacker with missiles? Yeah, definitely. But I had a lot more fun in this one because you actually have missiles and you have to fight supersonics. And while it's annoying to fight them because they can just run away, they think you're an alpha jet, they dogfight you, and then they find out that you can actually kind of win the fight. I don't recommend you to do the same, mind you. I think for most of you all, this is going to be the better pick. But I did want to have this here as a bit of an honorable mention. Tier 7, we go to the F4EJ 80TW, which I normally always recommended because you can circumvent the dogshit grind of the Japanese nation. But we actually got a couple of planes. That means that you don't have to buy it anymore. This plane is not good. Let me get it out of your system. Don't even think about it, lad. It is not very good. But it's a premium. But now we have actually some alternatives. First is the F-5A. Don't really have to introduce this one. It's a gunfighter with pretty good maneuverability. It's kind of slow though, and you are able to be bullied by better planes if they play it well. But if they try to dogfight you, you will be able to hang with most of your enemies. But be careful, it lacks a lot in the firepower and weapons department. That's where the F-5E FCU and the SCU come in. These two are basically the same plane. Not much to talk about. Wait, I can equip Python on this one, right? Yeah, I can. Okay, good. I was about to say, I was about to lose it. So these two planes are both pretty good. They're not fantastic because the missiles are easily flared. The issue is that, oh, this one does have less missiles. Okay, so this one is kind of dog shit. My apologies. I missed something in this massive list of planes. So I would say skip the SCU. I'm just gonna get rid of this. My apologies. This wasn't meant to be. The FCU has 4 Python trees, and while this plane is kind of slow still, the F-5E is better in terms of the flight performance. It has a good amount of countermeasures to a degree. You need to be careful with this thing. It leaves some things to be desired. I would say skip tier 7 altogether and go straight into the F-2 ATDW. It has a good amount of missiles. It has very good flight performance. The only issue is that you don't have Fox 3s or good Fox 1s. This plane is... It's kind of lacking. The AIM-7Ms are very easily rollable. So at the end of the day, you're kind of looking at a better F-16 flight model with 4 AIM-9 AAM-3s. And you have 4 AIM-7Ms to kind of back them up against slow enemies or against people that don't know what they're doing. These missiles are good and it gives you some presence in the head-on. But keep in mind that offensively, this is not the best plane. And you need to be careful with this purchase. But I do think that if you want to get all the way down here in this tree, I think that this is the best plane that you can pick. Because in tier 7, in tier 6, and even in rank 5, very often, I would just say get the ADTW instead. It's just a better F4EJ. It actually flies incredibly well. I had a terrible time on it, but I flew it on release when missiles didn't work, which definitely didn't help my case. But the plane is good. Keep in mind, it is not very noob friendly, and if you haven't grinded any other nation, and you haven't played top tier before, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this one. Then we have the F5TH TCU, which I made a video on last week. It's probably the most well-rounded Fox 3 slinger at 13.0. But keep in mind, you're pretty slow, and you don't have many missiles. And if you aren't aware, a slow plane with low missile count means that the chance of you wasting your missiles is pretty high. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this thing all the way, but it's probably the better pick that you can get in this tier, together with the F-16AJ, which is also one of the best F-16s that you can play right now. But offensively, again, it is kind of lacking, but what you do have is something they just removed off my pylon. It's the 2 AIM-7Fs. Now, these are worse than the AIM-7Ms by a very slight margin. You're not really going to notice if you're actually not comparing them in a data center. But they are different. Keep in mind, they are rollable pretty easily, just like with the older AIM-7s that I just mentioned. Next up is China, which again is pretty simple at the lower tiers because there's just not much to pick from. We have the CW21 and the I-153. And you can choose whichever you want. I would just skip them all together. Then we have tier 2, which I'd skip altogether as well. But the only salvageable plane here is going to be the P-40 ripoff. And, well, just skip tier 1 and 3. 1 and 2, there's really nothing going for it. And then tier 3 is actually pretty good. Now we have the P-51C11 for the marketplace. It's again the same thing as the P-51C I've talked about. Great plane, good climb, good speed, decent maneuverability, just a lack of firepower. Then we have another Ki-44, which are still some of the best planes in the entire game. And while I haven't played the Chinese version, they're the same one as you will find in the Japanese 3. And these things are incredibly under-tiered. If it weren't for the guns, the 12.7s are kind of okay nowadays, but they're not the best still. But the flight performance makes more than up for it. Then we have the P-38L1, same thing as the L0 basically in the American Tech Tree. Airspan with boosted controls, meaning that you don't really lock up. You have a good roll rate, you have an airspan, decent climb, very good maneuverability at low speed. Just be careful that the mouse and keyboard are, and the mouse kind of act differently on this plane. You need to get kind of used to this at super low speeds, but overall this plane is a very good way to grind tier 3. There is the P47 D30. It's slightly worse than the D28 in the American tech tree. Why? Well, it's 5.0 instead of 4.7, despite being the exact same plane, so it's still one of the best P47s that you can play. However, the BR is slightly higher, making it slightly less effective. Then we have tier 4, which is incredibly easy. We have the Ki 84 Co, which is the same thing as in the Japanese one. Slightly worse Spitfire, essentially. And then we have this absolute monstrosity, the Quing 6. Now, I made a video on this thing last week with an absolutely terrific thumbnail that I urge you to check out. It's a little bit criminal. This thing is a gunboat with tier 4 turrets at 5.0, and these engines are, well, they are quite something. We have 4250 horsepower per engine. This thing basically has no weaknesses other than the fact that it rips at a very low speed. It goes about 500, I believe. Or was it 4? I forgot at the top of my head. I'm sorry, this has been going for a long time. It's incredibly slow because it rips. I think it was 470 that it starts to rip. At 490, you are definitely going to rip. And then at 500, the plane is, you're just done. But this plane is an absolute menace. The gun on the nose is a little bit iffy because it only has 100 rounds. But the two on the top and the back are incredibly annoying to deal with. And you guessed it, I fly it without the gun modification for good measure. Then we have tier 5, which is also pretty simple. It's the F-84G because it gets an air spawn with premium. But the F-86 F-30 and the J2 are going to be the better planes. This is just a MiG-15 BIS variant. Again, good accel, good turn, good retention. Only two weaknesses really is the absolute top speed, the compression, the guns, and the roll rate to a certain degree. The F-30 is a lot more manageable, easy to use guns, easy to use platform, but in a 1v1 it does have some drawbacks against the J2. However, it is faster to the point where you can ignore them altogether. Next up is tier 6, where nothing really works out. We have the Q5 early if you really want to. It has flares at 9.3. The meta has shifted a little bit. I don't think it's the best anymore. And we have the Shenyang F5 if it's available. It's essentially a MiG-17F, so a MiG-17 with afterburner and missiles. And that's about the change of it. This thing used to be incredibly strong. Nowadays it's not the best anymore, but it's still premium and has pretty damn good rewards if you know how to play it. You are going to be bullied, however, because planes like the Q5 are at the same battle rating. Su-7s are at a lower battle rating, and so is the CL-13 Mark 6 for no apparent reason. Then we have tier 7, where we actually start to run into one of the best premiums that you can buy for this nation. It's the J7D. It actually wins the 1v1 versus a MiG-21 BIS. It has better missiles, although it has slightly less of them. This thing used to be absolutely horrid, but now it's at a lower battle rating than a MiG-21 BIS. I would say, yeah, this is a pretty good pickup because you can grind basically the entire tree with it. Next up is the A5C, which is more of a base bombing type of variant. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I'd say that the J7 is going to be the better pick. This thing used to be insane, but now this one is just straight up better other than retention. And then we have the J7E, which is one of my all-time favorite jets in the game. It's a MiG-21 BIS with actual energy retention and pretty damn good missiles. The PL-5Bs accelerate incredibly quick. They have good range, they pull quite hard, and the airframe it's on is one of the most brain-dead dogfighters that you will find in the entire game, actually. Other than, of course, planes like the Rough. I said it right. I need to cut that out. No, I'm just gonna mute it. You didn't hear what I said. The Ravioli, planes like that, of course, at 14.3, they're gonna be better. But when it comes to just the overall dogfighting experience, you can hold S against about everything. You don't even have to worry about maintaining your speed. Next up is gonna be tier 8, where I would say just skip this altogether. There's no good premiums. I don't think it's really worth putting a talisman on any of these other planes. So I just say skip tier 8 and go straight into Italy, where I just spoiled myself. We have the Macaroni CL-42. Tier 1, skip. Tier 2, kind of shitty. The C205s aren't the best anymore, especially with the firepower that they have, but they're pretty okay. Definitely flyable. And we have the SM-91, which is just a head-on machine with a pretty good turret on the back. Wouldn't recommend either of these to actually spend money on, but if you want to play something, feel free to do so. Then we have Tier 3, and Tier 3 has something that I don't actually have. It's the B-49 F4. It's one of the best, again, 109s that you will find in the game, at least tier for tier. And this would be my go-to. Now, if you can't buy this thing, because it's an event vehicle, unfortunately, we can go straight to the Mark 5B Trop. And the Mark 5B is a very maneuverable Spitfire with a very anemic engine, but it is a premium. It has pretty decent rewards. And for Tier 3, this is more than okay. The best plane that you can play here is going to be the Italian P-47 D30. Same thing as the D28 in American tree, as well as the same one as the D30 in the Chinese tree. Best P-47 model that you can probably fly. However, it's at 5.0 instead of 4.7, making it slightly less maneuverable. Next up is Tier 4, and we have probably the worst premium 109 that you can buy. It's the 109 G2, but it's a premium, good rewards. It's a very mediocre plane nowadays because a lot of stuff has been down-tiered. The firepower isn't the best anymore, but with the gun ports, you can at least have a plane that climbs well with good firepower. The plane isn't maneuverable enough. It's slightly stiffer than the F4, and it doesn't have the energy of the G6. So it kind of falls in between in kind of no man's land, where it doesn't have the strengths of either, but it has the weaknesses of both, which is a little bit of a shame. Then we have the worst Yak in the game, the Yak 9P. It's heavy with not a powerful enough engine that overheats incredibly quickly. Well, it's a powerful engine, but the plane is just too heavy. I don't like this thing. I would say skip Tier 4 in the Italian line because the C205 Series 3 also isn't that fantastic anymore. This thing used to be insane, but it's a bit of a boat now, and the 20 mils aren't as punchy as they used to be either. Next up is Tier 5, and Tier 5 is again the same thing as you've seen before. Airspawn, that's it. MiG-15 bis, do I have to say it again? Good acceleration, good retention, just a shitty roll rate, a compression, as well as the 23 with 37mm combo. The G91R4 is going to be the no-brainer, especially if you play ground RB. However, the issue really is that this plane isn't really it, and I just say skip it and go to Tier 6, buy the Ariete instead. We have the G91Y next to it, but the Ariete, this thing in terms of a subsonic without an afterburner, it's insane. You out-dogfight about everything. You can hang with top tier planes if they play it wrong. Now, of course, if they play it right, they're still going to kick your shit in, but this thing will out-dogfight about everything in the game, and the guns are good. It's decently fast. It's basically a Comet with good guns and no fuel limitation. This thing is batshit insane. If you want a gunfighter, be careful at 9.3 though. Planes are going to be much quicker than you with the supersonics flying around, as well as some missiles will absolutely kick your shit in. The G91Y is one of those planes that's kind of weird nowadays to play, but it has very good energy. And while it doesn't turn the best and it loses speed relatively quickly, it's a plane that can kind of do a bit of everything, and it's just a bit of a fragmobile. It's hard to describe because it doesn't really, on paper, do anything particularly fantastic, but it's one of those planes where if you take off, you start flying it, you will just start seeing yourself get more and more kills every match. It's incredibly easy to play this thing. It's incredibly ergonomic. The issue is just that the pull can kind of catch you off guard because it pulls extremely hard, and then once you get below like 800, it suddenly starts to pull nothing whatsoever. So if you're not careful of that, it will get you killed, but this plane overall is pretty easy to pick up and just play. And then we have the MiG-17 PF. It's a MiG-17 with an afterburner, which of course doesn't need an introduction really. Then next up we have Tier 7. We have the MiG-29 Sniper, because I don't think either of these planes are fantastic, but they are enough, they're good enough. We have the MiG-21 MF, it's the same one as in the German tech tree, and a MiG-21 Bissau, that is the same one as in the other spec tech trees. And this is of course the McDonnell spec with yellow and orange, which looks absolutely horrid, but I wouldn't want it any other way. And then Tier 8, it's the same thing, it's the MiG-29 Sniper, and while the plane is not exactly fantastic, it's all about the 27ER, because this thing is essentially just a free kill. Here we have it, the nation you've been waiting for. It's the Yak Tree, and tier 1, 2, 3 and 4 can probably be summarized by just buy the fucking Yak Tree. But in reality, in tier 3 there is a little bit of a difference. So we also have a plane that I don't have currently, and you guessed it, it's the F-6C, which is another P-51C. And I'm kind of sick of explaining what this plane is like. Just trust me when I say that it's pretty damn good. The Yak Tree, you can again ask Glitched how much this thing costs when it isn't on sale, because I just tend to forget that thing very often. You have the P-63, which I already talked about. It's fast, pretty overall good flight performance. Besides that, the issue again is going to be the guns. Luckily, the French actually managed to buy the belts, which means that instead of 50% of your shells being shit, now it's only 66% of your shells being shit. Absolutely incredible. Now, the MB157 has some pretty good flight performance and used to have some absolutely horrid cannon ammo. But now we actually have 404 cannon rounds not found. We have 240 instead of 120. This is pretty respectable. The guns are pretty good. I might actually try this thing out again now that it actually has a respectable amount of ammunition. Only took him like 5 years to actually change that. Next up is gonna be the SB2C, same thing as before. Airspawn, good guns, good stall speed and pretty decent in a one turn. However, if someone is good at the game, they will just absolutely bully you. If they aren't good at the game, you can expect to run down 2 or 3 guys at the start of the match and then die regardless, because that's just the reality of it. Then we have tier 4, which again is just by the Yak Tree. The 84 is okay when it comes to air-to-air. It can also ground pound, of course. It's mainly about the cannons. I wouldn't really say that it's a fantastic plane, but it's a premium with a pretty decent multiplier, even though the Yak has better ones, but we're not gonna talk about that. Next up is the Sea Fury, which is basically a fatter version of the Tempest Mark V, but it's honestly pretty damn good. Unfortunately, it's Dutch, so you just have to deal with that one as you play this thing. But the Sea Fury is a pretty good plane. It's kind of stiff though. I would say it's a slightly side grade to something like a 190. It climbs well, it holds its speed well, it's fast. The issue is just that the maneuverability leaves a bit to be desired because it's actually pretty damn heavy. Then we have the FU7, which is kind of in the same boat, and I would say it's kind of similar to the Sea Fury. And the thing is that it's 6.0 instead of 5.7, but you do get a whole lot of extra ammo on cannons that do hit a little bit harder. Personally, I think the FU7 is the better plane, but at 5.7 you're gonna have a much better time when it comes to the matchmaker, because 6.0 again really isn't forgivable right now. Next up is tier 5, and we can actually buy the Seahawk in this nation. It's probably the best plane that you can buy here, because, well, first of all, there is no other premium, but also because the Seahawk is actually a good frag machine. Now, something like this Meteor Mark 8, I think, is the better vehicle overall, but the Seahawk does have 2 AIM-9Bs, which come in clutch very often because people don't expect to be missiled at the BR where you might actually run into a prop when you are fully down tiered. My bad, it's 8.3, not 8.0. I just made an absolutely terrible reference. Doesn't matter, don't worry about it. The Seahawk, it's a fragmobile. The Meteor Mark 8 is the more versatile vehicle that actually has the ability to dogfight about everything. The Seahawk, it's a little bit too slow. It doesn't accelerate well enough. It's just kind of a downgrade. My voice is gonna just keep breaking now. It's a bit of a downgrade, but the missiles do make up for it in terms of killing power, which is of course a good thing. They have the MD452 and the Barugan. These are kind of in the same boat. Depends on what you like. This one is the better vehicle, but at 8.3 you are going to be running into MiG-15 Bisses and F-86 F-30s and stuff, which isn't exactly the most enjoyable thing to have. You can hang with these things in a dogfight if you know what you're doing. However, if they know what they're doing, you're still going to lose. Then we have the Barugan, which is the lower BR version, where it's a lot more balanced. You will run into planes that will absolutely kick your shit in, but there's also a lot of vehicles that you can hang with pretty reliably. Personally, I just get the Mark 8, but that's just my take. We also have the Vautour, which personally, if I had to choose, I'd pick it together with the Meteor to grind. This thing is very good at the early game. You get an air spawn, you get to kill bombers for free. You have Nords, which are pretty funny to use, and you can use the F-5NA, although they're not the best missile. If someone is stalling out, it is good for multitasking. So you can use the missile on a bomber, and then at the same time guide it a Nord on someone else, meaning that you kind of double your killing potential. Not a fantastic plane, but it's a pretty decent grinder. And when they actually completely fix this plane, it's going to be a bit of a menace at 8.3 because you will be outrunning essentially everyone in the lobby. Next up is tier 6, and I hate to say this, but it's going to be the Milan. I hate this thing, but it's actually the best thing that you can buy in this nation at this tier because all the other things are just completely horrid. The F6 used to be really good, but I don't think at 9.3 I would want to play this thing, but that's a story for another time. We have the Alpha Jet E, same thing as before, better. There's actually nothing about this thing that I would like. It's decent in terms of dogfighting, and it's decent in terms of just flying around the same way as the other Alpha Jets, but I wouldn't want to grind an entire tree or an entire tier with this thing, so I would just say skip the tier 7 and get the Mirage F1C 200 instead. And the same thing goes for tier 8. You can buy the 2000 CS4, but the Mirage F1C is all you really need for the French tech tree if you want jets, and if you want props, just buy the Yak tree instead. The F1C here is basically the same thing, except it is in a premium. And they have the Super E-10 Now, this isn't the best plane on the list, but it's pretty fun. It's a different type of plane. You have to energy fight without actually maneuvering your plane. The engine is incredibly strong, but the wings are designed poorly and it loses speed incredibly fast. It's a bit of an underdog plane. I wouldn't recommend it if you aren't familiar with the game and if you don't want a challenge. But it's a pretty okay plane if you know what you're doing and your enemy doesn't. Get the F1C. Trust me, it's the best thing you can buy for this nation. And tier 8, again, there's not much here. The OCU is okay. I would just say get the CS4 if you have it. Put a talisman on it. Never look back. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, France is just kind of annoying to talk about. Same thing with Sweden and Israel, which we will talk about next. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little bit short and I'm starting to sound annoyed. My voice is just killing me and I'm trying to wrap this up. Then we have Sweden. We have the Veal Priormersky, which I would recommend for tier 1, 2, 3, and probably 4, except we have the 109 over there. But we'll get to that in a second. For tier 1, I get the fucker, and I just wanted to say that word. The plane isn't that good. Same thing with the G8A. Skip it all together. Tier 2, it actually starts to become a little bit easier. We have the Priormersky still, which I think is the best one. But we have the B239, which is probably the best tier 2 that you can find here. Good firepower, and it's actually better than the F2A that you will find in the American tree because it's slightly lighter. We also have the Morkel Moraine, and it's good, but I don't like the way it feels, so I would still go with the B239 and just save yourself some money because the Morkel Moraine also doesn't cost anything, to be honest, but tier 2 and 3, tier 1 and 2 I just wouldn't really spend any money on. The B18A, I mean, it's a meme plane. Incredibly good guns. The 13 mils are some of the best in the game. You have 2 gunners with them as well, and you get an air spawn with a very good damage model. And of course you can bomb with it if you so desire. Then we reach tier 3, and I only have to look at the Priormersky because this entire tech tree is just absolute buns. None of this is actually worth playing. We then reach rank 4, where the only 2 planes that you want to play are the G6 as well as the G6. It's the, again, more authentic BF-49 experience that you will find in War Thunder. It fixes a lot of the issues that the G2 has. It doesn't really overheat anymore. The engine is good enough to carry the airframe now. And while it's still not the most maneuverable, the firepower and engine actually make up for it. Then we reach tier 5, where I have to recommend a plane that I absolutely despise. It's the Saab 105G and the Saab 105. It's premium. It has bombs, it has rockets, it has cannons and missiles, and at 8.3, it's not going to be the best in terms of flight performance. It's going to be a ground pounder at the end of the day, but with some changes, as well as the battle rating changing all around the vehicle, it has become a lot more playable. Then for rank 6, we have the J37DI F21. Now, this is not a rank 6 if you are keen on your eyes. You can just buy the J35XS or the J37DI because the rank 6 and 7 grind when it comes to the tech tree is absolutely terrible. A32 is not it, the J34 is not it. The J29F is flyable, but it's a higher BR than something like an F2 for no reason at all. And I would just say skip this thing altogether. Skip this entire tier whatsoever, together with rank 7. Where the MiG-21 BIS and the AJ-37 are kind of okay, but the J-35 is basically unflyable. The J-37C is kind of shit now with the new flight model, as well as the AJ-37. The AJ-37, or the AGS-37. The AJ-37 is somewhat flyable because it's 10.3, but overall the only playable plane in these two tiers is essentially the MiG-21 BIS. So if you want to get through to rank 8, I just say bite the bullet, buy the J37DI. I wouldn't say it's a fun plane. It's not a great plane. The flight performance is basically the same as something like the F-4F Phantom, the F-4F ICE. But the ICE has more data link channels. At least it used to. I think they fixed that actually. My bad. It's not an enjoyable plane to play, but it's pretty consistent because you have 4 AMRAAMs. And that's about the extent of it. We also have, of course, the JA35 or the J35XS, which I think is actually pretty good now. You don't run into fucker 90s anymore because the F14 IAF is now at 13.0 and you are at 10.3, but you don't have RWR, which means that radar missiles are absolutely going to do you in. Now you have 6 missiles, but you only have 1 gun, 12 countermeasures, however they pop separately. This is a plane that's somewhat okay. It's pretty good. I'm not a big fan of playing it, however, even though it's the best Draken that you can play in the game. If you like this plane, you won't be wasting your money, but I'm not a big fan of it either. And again, the issue is with this thing, that is just an absolute dog to play, just like with the F-4F ICE. The only thing you have going for you are going to be the missiles, which is a good way to grind, but I think is just an absolutely terrible playing experience. Then we have Israel, where we can just start at tier 4. The only prop that's worth buying or anything on is going to be the Weissman Spitfire, but I don't think it's available anymore. Israel is essentially just the Kavir Canard up until you get to the nets. I hate to be this short and this blunt, but all of these planes are kind of ass. This thing is okay, but I wouldn't spend any money on it. Then we have tier 5, again Kavir Canard. Meteor Mark 8 that you find in every other tech tree that I already talked about. Then we have tier 6. The Ajit is probably the best plane that you can actually play here. Good Excel, flares, good missiles. It has been up to 9.7. It used to be 9.3, so it isn't as good as it used to be. But it also is still pretty solid. Just be careful, you're still flying on an A4 platform, just with a bigger engine in it. Planes like the F8U, for example, are just going to absolutely stomp you. But if you get down-tiered into flareless vehicles, this thing is an absolute menace. But again, just buy the Kavir Canard instead. Tier 7 is the, you guessed it, the Kavir Canard. And then when we get into tier 8, we have the Nets mod. Now, I would still say that tier 7, the Kavir Canard, is going to be the better plane. But the Nets here is going to have some actual playability. It's slightly worse in terms of raw performance, BR for BR, I think. The thing is, it's an F-16. It's much better to play. It can do whatever you want. Defensively, it's pretty strong. Offensively, it can only shoot from behind, essentially, or maybe in a head-on with the gun. Keep in mind that these missiles do not have IRCCM. You don't have radar missiles, so you can't really do anything until you get into the later stages of the game. If you are very familiar with the game, if you're good at top tier, if you're good and familiar with 12.7, this thing is pretty damn strong. If you are a newer player, I wouldn't recommend picking this thing up because this thing needs a little bit of finesse to actually make work properly. Rest of tier 7 Kavir Canard is going to have an easier time for you. The issue is for $5 extra, you're going to get a tier 8, and in the future, tier 9 will probably arrive, and then the Kavir Kanat is going to be kind of obsolete and you need to buy something again. So in terms of future-proofing, the Nets is going to be better. But if you're a newer player, for now, the tier 7 Kavir Kanat is probably going to be the better pick. Okay, my voice is dead. That's basically all I have for you today. If you want a good Silver Lion grinder, it's the same as always. Pick a premium that you're used to. Pick a premium out of this list that I recommend somewhere. Most of the time, the tier 4, the tier 3 premiums are going to be the best. Think of F-5NA, think of the Pure Mursky, think of the Yak 3 for France. Think of the XP50, XP55, and there's a lot of jets like the SU-11, for example, and the MiG-15 Bis, which have insane multipliers. The higher the BR, or the higher the tier, with a premium, the more it's going to reward you. But be careful, if you're in too high of a BR, you're probably going to get less effective results, meaning that you get less money in return. The better you are, the higher BR you can play, and then you can, of course, earn more money. It's kind of like a risk-reward. The higher the BR, the higher the repair cost, and the more likely that you are to run into good players, which means that you are going to get less done. It's going to be a trade-off for you. I can choose that for you, but I'm going to go to bed now because my voice is about to actually start cracking every 2 sentences. Thank you all very much for watching. If you want to buy anything, feel free to use my link in the description, and I'll see you all next week when the packs probably go on sale as well.